I lost $500,000, is what I would be saying if I was stupid. But luckily I'm not. I was able to see what the problem was going to be and solve it. The problem when people get into business is they're only looking at the overall outcome, which is good, but you can skip over a lot of the small things in between, which end up being the biggest part of the picture. Case in point, this particular business venture that I was going to go into about maybe 5 years ago. So this business was, of course, the fast food industry. Now, I wasn't going to do a franchise type thing because we'll be talking about $1 million, $2 million for that. I'm talking about starting my own place. $500,000 is what was on the table here. But the thing is, I didn't know that at the time. As I worked through putting together the idea, my only overall goal was creating a good product and making profit off that. Now that's where the problem comes in, making profit off that in the food industry. If you're in the food industry, you'll know what I'm going to say. There's no profit in the food industry. There is at the very top if you own major products and labels. But if you're a single person who's trying to start a food business of some sort, then if your goal is to make profit, you're basically screwed. Food business has the lowest profits across many industries. The reason for that is because it's food. Food not only spoils after a certain amount of time, but you have to spend a lot of money to make sure you've got ingredients for every single aspect of your business. And food requires constant attention, constant cooking, so you have to pay people to be there constantly, regardless of if you're selling or not. Now, most food businesses, fast food businesses, make anywhere from 3 to 5% profit, and that's if they're lucky. The unlucky ones just lose money. The highest rate possible in the food industry is 15 to 20% profit, and that comes from those boutique stores, like say a boutique cafe, which usually shuts down in about 6 months because it's not sustainable. But every so often you get one of those random hyped up 5-star restaurants where they manage to turn a really high profit. But again, that doesn't last very long. You may have heard of that guy called Salt Bae in his Nusrat Steakhouses, and you probably haven't heard of them anymore. That's because a lot of them have shut down. The reason for that is because besides the fact that he wasn't paying his employees properly and stealing his tips, the major issue was they were selling quite cheap meat for really premium prices. The profit margin at the steakhouses would have been anywhere upwards of 30-35% even, depending on what products were purchased. That's unheard of in the food industry. So back to my story, I of course didn't know what I was getting myself into at the time. I did all the numbers, I thought all of it was legit, all of it's good. Everything was ready to go. The money's ready to push forwards. And the good part is, it would have been the best part if I had lost $500,000, because most people don't lose $500,000, they might lose $1 million. Most people who go into fast food, or any sort of food business actually, there's two types. There's people who franchise, and there's people who start by themselves. So looking at the people who start by themselves, start their own one, 80 to 90% of those are made up by, I don't want to say it directly, but you pretty much know what I'm talking about when I say Asian food businesses. You see, when you go to a shopping mall, usually shopping malls have 2 food courts, by the way. So that's the good part about doing the business that I did. I learned a lot of inside industry secrets. Most shopping malls have 2 food courts. They've got the premium food court and the non-premium food court. Now the difference between those 2 food courts is the premium food court has franchises and major labels. The contracts there usually run for about 5 years. 3 to 5 years is what they lock you in for. Whereas in the non-premium food court, you'll find that in a random part of the shopping center. It'll majority be Asian-owned businesses, because that's the industry a lot of them go into. Contracts there are usually around 1 to 3 years. Now, if you know real estate and how contracts and stuff work, you know there's a significant difference between a 1 year and a 5 year contract. The reason they do this is because it scams on every level, basically. So what happens is, which is what I found out going into it, the shopping centers give a 1 year contract because they know it's certain to fail. And they don't want it to fail and you actually have $0 and then the whole thing just looks stupid and makes the shopping center look bad because you're out of business inside their shopping center. So they keep the contracts short. When you go into a shopping mall of any sort with your brand, they have to put you down for, you need to spend a certain amount of money on creating the site. You have to spend a certain amount of money on the initial deposit, which is usually about 3 months rent. Then you have to have money in holding, which is usually another 3 months rent to cover if things were to go wrong, which they're going to go wrong, that's how they work. After learning all these ins and outs of how these industries actually work, and knowing, I mean, I knew from the start the profit percentage is going to be low, I realized the profit standard is so low on a lot of these products that there's only one way to actually succeed, well not succeed, actually be able to do a food business. And that way is, it's weird because in business it's about money, but that way is to actually care about what you're doing. If you go into the food industry and you don't care about the whole business or food or anything, then it's completely a waste of time, waste of money. It's not going to work. Most businesses you see that are consistently running as a food business are barely just breaking even. They're either at zero or in a slight bit of profit. Unless they're lucky and they're making, doing consistent business, but the percentage is still going to be low. Those people are able to continue because they're actually enjoying what they're doing. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, food is the worst business to get into. And as I almost learned as I went through the process, all the way up to basically about to sign the name on the contract and start up the location, is the chance of it working was not too bad because the idea was good. And they even mentioned to me, all the people I met with, that the idea is definitely there. So there's not really going to be a problem. The problem is, at the exact location I was going to be put in, the exact market at the time, I'm going to be running a thin line between break even to losing everything. And the risk on that becomes stupid at that point because at the end of it, I didn't really care about the product I was selling. It was only about making money. So making money, bad ideal. If I had gone through based on the numbers that I'm looking at, it would have just not worked anyway. So I would be down $500,000 if I'm lucky, or more likely $1 million. Because most food places, because they've sunk so much money in, they try to keep sinking money in to save themselves. Always a bad ideal. I think the funniest part about fast food places particularly, a lot of the people who buy these places are spending like $1 million to buy the place, and then to save money they go and work there. So imagine having $1 million and then you go and get a minimum wage job. Like, who's going to spend $1 million to work for $10 an hour? Like, that's just, you have to really, really enjoy what you're doing when you come into food. And there's some people who do, but for most people, they don't. So I would not suggest going into this business. I moved out of it, found other things, online-based things, which are extremely high profit percentage for very low minimum initial investment and very low minimum work. So if we're talking about food, high investment, high risk, high work, and you'll probably lose everything, versus what I do now online, low risk, low work, and profit percentages 80-90% honestly, because that's just how online stuff works. If that's something you want to learn more about, make sure you subscribe. I'm going to be pivoting into business type videos. I've been doing a little bit of food industry secret videos because, I do a lot of stuff in the food industry, so I do know things that other people don't have access to. If you want to know more about that, leave in the comments which one you want to see, food or business or something else related to that sort of stuff, and I'll make that. Otherwise, make sure you're subscribed and we'll have another one coming up soon.